This vlog is going to be in response to David Doyle. David Doyle is someone who has followed PodLayer for a while from kind of the outside at a distance, and he offered some thoughts regarding the PodLayer fallout. All right, he says, I just watched some of your videos and I know your involvement with your theory might be less communal going forward. Yep, that is very true and it is a necessity. He says, there's a few thoughts on my mind I'd like to share. Congrats on the move and stuff. Enjoy your new environment. Yep, Portland is definitely going to be a wonderful upgrade. So far, I really enjoy it. I think it's going to be more conducive than SoCal was as far as me being able to stay in a heightened state of concentration. So looking forward to see what that brings. He says, I'm a bit concerned about your herb use, but that says more about me probably. Haha, enjoy. Yeah, it does. If you actually understood the sacred herb better, then you would realize that it is unjustly maligned. But, you know, teach their own. He says, some other things. I feel like I'm watching you mature and get a stronger model in the world throughout the years. I am. With the new influences, areas of study, interactions, relationships, it seems like it is opening up your thinking. Yes and no. It is both giving me things to work with and realizing what humans will need in order to understand what I have discovered, how it can go through their psyche in a way that won't freak them out too much and they can go through progressions. But it's also made me aware that modern humans are, for the large part, going to be incapable of doing what needs to be done, and I'm going to have to look forward to the future humans to help me out. So my relationships will be more heavily weighted towards that end. He says, about Demas, I think he's awesome, but I would urge you not to take him too seriously. I don't. He is definitely smart, but where he lacks certainty, he pushes really hard emotionally as to cover his track. Yeah, that should be fairly obvious to most people, but apparently the email that moved so many people to see that the emperor has no clothes, apparently, yeah, they really just glossed right past that fact. I think that his anger with you is less personal and more of a pervasive characteristic of a person who thinks like he does. Without you, he would still have the same vitriol. Yeah, I probably was a catalyst in some ways to kind of him feeling the cracks of his character. But yeah, I think those cracks were already there, and that was just going to be the reaction when he met those stressors. Me and the greatness of the discovery that I have brought to the table and the greatness that I have in being the one to do so, greatness stresses people. And a lot of people cannot handle being in the presence of greatness, whether it is the greatness of a person, the greatness of a situation, or the greatness of an idea. They just can't handle the greatness. It breaks them. He says, I believe that you have this domineering characteristic as well, but again, with your continuous life experience, I believe you are softening in your approach of communicating ideas. No, you are mistaken. No, I have learned that I need to be more rigorous with pursuing the truth in the way I need to do it, and then giving things in the way they need to be given, not in ways I think will be acceptable, palatable, understandable, tenable for modern humans. That was an error on my part, and I will be correcting that error. I was going the wrong direction in that regard. I'm going to be fixing my course. He says, you can be happy to know that at the very least you did help to gather like-minded people, people seeking understanding, and those that have a higher standards of living. No. I'm sorry to say, David, that that's not the case. That's been a hard lesson I've had to learn. These were not like-minded people, like one I just did about John Taylor. I am not wigged out by whether or not the proper understanding of natural law has determinism in it, or how much is in it. It simply is what it is. So no, I'm not like-minded with these people. I'm not like-minded that when a discovery of this magnitude is on the table that I am distracted by less important things. No. These people do not seek understanding. They seek mental masturbation and an interesting variety, and apparently I was able to give them a nice vintage of mental masturbation for them to work with, but that was not what I was offering. So these people do not seek, in my opinion, understanding. They have not conduct themselves accordingly. And those that have a higher standards of learning, there are a few that do, and I'll give them credit for that, but for the large part, no. I was unimpressed with people's efforts. They don't strike me as the kind of efforts of serious seekers. You made some psychological concepts interesting and worked a lot publicly showing that understanding people is important. Well, okay, if that's all people got out of it, that's at least something. Yes, understanding people is very, very important. I would go so far as to say it is the most important thing for people to be able to do because understanding micro and macro discoveries and what it all means and what we're supposed to do with it and how we walk forward with this information, that'll all come from understanding ourselves. He says, I want to commend you for openly addressing the criticisms of yourself and Pod Lair. I do what I can. I'm merely human. It is what it is. And yeah, people can take from that what they want. He says, this has allowed me to reflect and also to write this up, which gives you another data point. It does. It's another data point of a person that, I think you're trying, but I think that the level of understanding you have of what, it sounds like you are not sure if the phenomenon is real or not. So you have a long way to go. In fact, there are, and you're being nice here, so I don't want to be mean to you, but there are losers amongst the ex-Pod Lair that actually have better reading ability than you. That makes me sad, because you seem more likable than a lot of them. But unlike some people, I try to actually just say things as I see them. So I see you in a lot of ways as a nicer, more well-meaning person, but also clearly there are people in the ex-Pod Lair who can at least see some cues. They can see that there is something there. So it looks like that's beyond you. It is what it is. The nicest people aren't necessarily the people who have the most talent or determination or lives that they live that are going to be conducive to getting the job done. So hopefully maybe you can do better in the future. I wish the best for you. The data is there for you to look at. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. He says, I hope you continue to vlog and create different expressions shared amongst people to continue to document your journey so that others can learn from you. Yep, that's the plan. Never going to stop. that is going to be the joy of my life, and I'm going to raise it up with everything I have. Raise it up, pursue it, internalize it, be it, walk it out. Yeah, leave a legacy of. Yeah, good stuff. He says, that said, mega genius, greatest discovery of all time, smiley face. Those concepts are awesome for your self-esteem, and you have done a lot to empower others and yourself. But it does make you come across as narrow-minded, which is fine. Well, coming across as narrow-minded is not technically fine. I guess you're saying that, we can agree, disagree, differences are okay. So I agree, yeah, it's fine to have differences of opinion. The mega genius is not an awesome thing for my self-esteem. Actually, it's a burden. It's a burden that means that I have to do a lot of things that I would like to share the effort on. So, greatest discovery of all time, same thing. It is what it is. My spirits make me understand that, and even my detractors, for example, who are saying, bad things about me and trying to disparage the model and where it's going and so forth, several of them are admitting that they can actually see parts of it. Parts that at what they are saying they see makes it minimum one of the greatest discoveries of all time. Minimum. It does. If there are 4 quadrants of the psyche, of which there are 4 body types that go with it, and this relates in some way with the psychological profile of the 4 Greek humors, that alone is one of the greatest discoveries in the history of humans. Minimum. Now, those detractors actually said that out loud. They said that they believed that might be the case, but did not say that's one of the greatest discoveries of all time. Yes, it is. They're saying that they believe I've shown them a science fiction world that's real. I'm pointing out the matrix and they can see it. And they are asleep. They're asleep. I don't know how any human, just telling you straight out, David, I don't know how any human could actually say that and believe what they said and not be like, this is such a big deal, we really blah, 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 blah. But they don't. So, I have to tell people, because clearly they're not getting it. Greatest discovery of all time, I have to tell them that, because even when they say things, they would immediately put it somewhere in that echelon. They refuse to take that step. So I have to take it for them and make sure people understand. Next, mega genius. I'm doing you all a favor, because apparently your ability levels are so beneath mine that it hurts your feelings a lot. Me being a mega genius, maybe then you can still call it, like you said, Demas. Demas, he's smart. Well, he still thinks that it's just how faces look, which it's not. So the future humans are going to think he's a jackass. By me being a mega genius, I'm raising everyone else up. I'm making, because the gulf is, it is what it is. I can see it, and other people's lack of ability to see is what it is. Their lack of ability to internalize the implications of it is what it is. by me being a mega genius, first of all, that's just the way it is. It is. If you can see the phenomenon, which you can't, but if you can, the mind that did that is clearly way ahead of everybody else. And by saying that, their much lower performances is not as bad. Maybe they're not stupid, they're just modern humans. They're just smart for modern humans. But smart or very intelligent for a modern human is nowhere close to the caliber of mind, of spirit required to solve this. So it's a burden for me to have to carry this. It's a responsibility for me to have to point this out. And it's a gift that other people can actually go, oh, well, the reason I can't do it is I'm not a genius. Cool, take your out, get off the mat, and let those who can perform stay and do their job. You reveal yourself here. He says, I would say that wording should be reserved for groups of people bestowing you that title rather than something you can deduce by yourself. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's like actually scientists during Einstein's age actually be able to accurately say what he was. No, they couldn't. They're falling all of themselves just being so butthurt about how great he was and how not great they were. How their discoveries, which sure some of them were probably decent, important in some ways, no one really gave a shit. Not compared to equals MC squared. No, they didn't. So those people are actually not qualified. You're familiar with the idea of a jury of your peers. No one's my peer. So why would I accept the judgment of the processing power of my CPU? You're acting like, see, it bothers you. Let me put it this way. Makes this less, the mega genius sounds too personal, it's too human. Let's make it computer. If I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and I am, it means, and the level of me seeing it is so different than other people, my bio CPU is several classes higher in processing capability. Not like differences within a range, it is several entire ranges higher. Now you can say that however you want and maybe making it technical is easy for you to handle. Is it wrong for a person who owns a computer that can actually process visual data in a certain way that is way higher than other computers? Wrong for saying that. What if those people say, I can't process, Photoshop like yours does. Photoshop must be wrong, or you must be telling me wrong things about Photoshop. No, your computer can't load the program, or you can barely load the program. When you try to use it, it's going to crash almost every 5 seconds because you can barely just get in your computer at all, much less actually operating a lot of projects off that program. That's just the facts. Now, are you telling me that people with lesser CPUs are supposed to give the title of most powerful CPU to the most powerful CPU? That's ridiculous. That never happens. Ever. Apparently you are completely unfamiliar with the See, this is softy land you're in. You're in softy seeker, wannabe seeker land. You gotta be seeker that can actually go all around existence, including into things like business plans, war plans, campaign plans. You have to actually say what you are. You have to say what equipment you have, because it's important for people to know what they need or don't need and how they can actually relate what you're able to perform with what equipment you're working with. Mega Genius is a description of the bio CPU that's working this case. So maybe you want to hear it this way. This is a fact. If, I think it's true, but we'll put it as if this phenomenon is real, I am the one who's discovered it way beyond anyone else, so my bio CPU, in regards to visually observing the human condition, quality of humans, is several classes higher. It's at a new class. It is a new computer class that could actually process the program of the human condition. The qualia of the different categories and how they go together, social alchemy, that's a kind of program. My bio CPU can run it. Most of the people can't, or if they can run very small portions of it. They can't even run anything close to the whole program, and their simulations of what they can do are not good and often crash their program, crash their computer. So, if this language makes you feel better, fine, but in the end, it's the same thing. And no, when the best CPU in the market comes on the market, it doesn't wait for the market to say how good it is. It doesn't wait for competitors or neutral parties. It says what it can do. Now, if you want to prove me wrong, then we're all waiting to see whether or not the future humans agree with my assessment of human qualia or not. They're going to. to a large degree, they're definitely going to say I was way on the right path and you all were just not doing anything of great importance in that regard. Exactly how much I got right? Sure, even I don't know what that is. There's no question I'm way beyond. So, how do we explain this? And am I not supposed to say that's how it happened? Because people are like, how come someone else didn't do it? Their bio-CPU was insufficient for the task. That's why. But in human terms, like, I'm a genius. Well, other geniuses around. How come the Greek people did it, or how come Carl Jung, he was a genius? I'd give Carl Jung the credit of, like, maybe a genius. He's a genius, maybe a genius. I mean, he's up, but he didn't do it. He got into it, but he actually couldn't make a library of famous people with pictures and put them in the right categories. Why? His bio-CPU was lesser than mine. So, if you say that Carl Jung is onto something with the 16 category, or in his case, the 8 cognitive functions, he was light years ahead of other people. So he's really, really smart. But I'm dwarfing him. So, what do you call these categories? There has to be a name for them. Bio-CPU is a bit cold. It's really a human. Because of spirituality, there's personal development that makes you able to do this or not able to do it, besides just processing talent. So, the fact that this bothers you is a problem for you. And you seem like a nice person, but I tell you, the fact that you think this, you're just wrong. You're flat out wrong. Forget Mojo, forget Podlair, forget me. That's a wrong statement you just made. The idea that when some new thing comes on the market for humans, and it is way better than any other product, that you actually wait for competitors, neutral news magazines, the population at large to actually acknowledge this is the best CPU on the market, able to do things others can't. You have to declare. If you don't, people won't know you're there at all sometimes, or they won't know how to interact with you, or if they do, it's way too slow. It is way too slow for other people to think that. He says, the fact is, after we die and technology and humans continue to have hive mind to work greater peaks, we will all be surpassed. Yeah. To a degree. See, I think you're a little wrong here. Well, maybe if you talk about super future, but if you're talking about just like future, like a few generations, a few hundred years, whatever, 1,000 years, no. Because you are aware that, what Einstein can do, what Newton could do, what Pythagoras could do, today, there are very few who can do that. There are very few humans who can actually work at the level those humans worked in their brain without a computer to aid them. So you must acknowledge, whether you want to or not, that human progress has mainly not gone forward through hive mind think tank work. No, it hasn't. No. Most major breakthroughs came through singular individuals that were extraordinary for their age, and would have been extraordinary anywhere they went. And modern humans are able to follow in their tracks. They can follow E equals MC squared. They still don't have the kind of bio-CPU to make a breakthrough like that. No. They can work off the breakthrough and perhaps take the breakthrough further than the original person could. But no, they wouldn't be there without that person. In fact, if that work was taken away, they wouldn't be able to do it. In the future, they'll be able to see what I'm doing is correct, and a lot more people will be able to do it because there'll be more people who train it, there'll be more talent put forward, more money put forward, and more computers there put forward to do it. Still, if you were to take all that away, how many of them would be able to do it without the infrastructure of what I brought? Very few. So you're wrong on that. Yeah, like I said, even today, if you go to think tanks and so forth, most of the people working on stuff from great thinkers are running through those tracks to build themselves up, and then with things that computers can do to help do more experiments that can see if that previous great thinker was right or wrong, that's what they can do. They'll probably stay doing that. Working with that person did, finding the holes in it, finding the edges, finding the limitations, finding little areas that things were off, naming things better, and they'll stay doing that. That's their, their incremental, addition to the cause, until another great human comes around to blow us through the next barriers, to the next higher ground. No, hive minds of, people who are working on previous great work, they are important, but not, I think, in the way you seem to think. You seem to think they're going to take that torch, own that torch, and carry that torch forward. No, they're going to take that torch as best they can, trying to fuck it up too bad, do some incremental improvements on it, and basically just kind of shepherd it for a while until another extraordinarily talented person comes in and moves that torch forward in a significant fashion. That's how things go forward. Look up history. That's how it works. So this is a little bit of communist thinking. This is a little bit of Marxist thinking. This is a little bit of snowflake thinking. And I don't think you're a bad person, but I'm just telling you this because I want to do well by you. You're wanting to spread out the credit for how these things go forward in a way that's not true. That sounds smart to you, I think, when you said it. You're actually describing a utopia. That's not how it works. And that's been described before. In the days of Pythagoras, people thought that everyone would be Pythagoras going in the future. After Newton, people thought everyone would be like Newton in the future who trained enough. That has not come to pass. No, it hasn't. Not at all. That's not how it works. That's a communist, Marxist, we can all have it kind of thing. Nature does not support that. That's not how it goes forward. You're going to have to get rid of that thinking, because that's utopian thinking, where we all share in the talent together, and so the incredible accomplishments of a few great people isn't that big of a deal. It makes you feel better. In the future, thanks for the help, great genius person. Now we can all just divvy it up and we all have it now. No, you won't. No, you won't. I can tell you right now, from what I've seen, in the future, very few people are going to be able to be great Moji readers, even having given to work with everything I have. Even giving me that map, very few are going to be able to do it. They're going to have to actually get microchips in people's heads and computers that can kind of just do it on their own. That's how it'll be a mass thing. If you're thinking that it'll be a mass thing because people are going to take my work and go with it, no. And do you know why? They do not have the bio-CPU processing powers. They are not genius enough. In every generation of humans, there are very few geniuses. There are even fewer super geniuses. And certain work, certain levels of mathematics are only able to be done by the bio-CPU of genius plus people. That's just a fact. You can be told about the concepts and work with it, but really, you're being given a tool to work with that works very well. That doesn't mean you can design this tool, engineer this tool, make this tool better. You're really just wrong that you think that genius gets dissipated like this into some sort of, we all get some kind of equal share and we own it together. No. No. This is you balking at greatness. Greatness is as greatness is, and the people use it as they can until another greatness comes along to move it forward. That's the flow of history. What you're talking about has never been done. And there have been many huge breakthroughs. Some ones I mentioned, other ones, huge dramatic breakthroughs, and then for generations, hundreds of years, people kind of work that and tease it out a bit. Most of them not really able to load that program on their own. They have to use a machine, or they have to use a few humans in their generation that can actually realize what the great person did, and those people are great enough to do it on their own, and everyone else kind of works off of them. Even if you get to where computers can do this for you, yeah, but does that mean you're like computers do the decision making? If you want to make upper level decision making, you're going to have to hold humanity, the algorithm of it, in your head somewhat. You're not going to be able to foist that off onto computers. Computers can't do it for you. Nor can a collective of sub-geniuses. You can have 10,000 sub-geniuses. They will not break through to new ground like a single genius. You have to accept this. All history supports what I just said. And after that genius breaks through, people can work on it experimental-wise, but that does not mean they can actually run the program themselves. You have to know this. Very few humans can actually do what Pythagoras did. That was a long time ago. And nowadays, most things that are done come from machines. Humans can't do it. Very few. And then you're like, well, machines are there. Yeah, but you can't let the machines make decisions for you of upper level stuff. There still has to be a few humans with independent thought and a bio-CPU of sufficient genius to comprehend things and thus use the computers appropriately. So I'm sorry here. You're just wrong. And it's a weakness you're going to have to get past. He says, we can possibly reach a relatively high level amongst our peers. I'm beyond relatively high. I blow you all out of the water. Does that hurt your feelings? It is what it is. I'm either right or wrong, and you can prove that with the data or not. It is what it is, one way or the other. And then I'm either really crazy or I am really genius. That's it. So yeah, if I am seeing what I'm seeing, I am beyond relatively past my peers. I am so beyond it that I make their heads pop, their noses bleeds, their throats constrict when I try to take them even a little bit into the realms I can travel. He says, but with broader scopes, we can remain humble. That's just not true. Do you really think that? So let me get this straight. You think if Pythagoras was to somehow come back in today and see the world and how it is, both in where it is because of his work compared to what other humans in his lifetime and all the lifetimes that transpire between there and now, he'd be humbled? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I'll say it again to break the spell on you. That's ridiculous. You think Pythagoras would come back now and see the influence he still holds, and how few humans after all these years can actually run what his bio CPU could way back then. You think he would be humbled? No. You think Newton would be humbled? Why? He's one of the few people who's actually were still using his work all these years later. He probably didn't even understand exactly how far beyond people he was. I mean, he did to a large degree by isolate himself, but really, humbled. Okay, I'm sorry, I should tell you this. You're saying that you just aren't great at anything. Because the idea that, like, I mean, we can even take sports. If there was some dude, and there probably was in the whole history of humans, that, like, in wrestling, was able to just grab people's skulls and just turn to jelly. All right, that's probably, like, freakishly rare. So you actually think that if that person was to come back here in modern day, that they would look what wrestlers can currently do and they'd be humbled? They would be seeing a testament to their greatness. Pythagoras would come around now and just see a testament to how great he was, how far beyond his peers of his day were, and how few humans in all these years could compete with him. He could come out today, if he's as smart as he was to do what he did in his day, he'd come here now, think, wow, I did such amazing work, it's incredibly great. Wow, so few people here can do it at all. I'm freaking amazing. And I think I could probably just pick up your textbooks and read them all in like a year and break through more shit for you. Humbled? No. Greatness is not humbled unless it is surpassed. If it stood on to go to higher ground, that's not humbled. That's you wouldn't be up there without me. And the level up I gave you, some mathematicians gave you 1 level up, 2 levels up. I gave you whole mountains up. Pythagoras and Newton, Einstein, they gave whole mountains up. Whole mountains. No, mountains actually in the future do not feel humble if no other mountains have actually done more than them. And doing more with what Einstein did than Einstein did is not doing more. If you think that, you're just wrong. They couldn't even be there without him. And there's certain ways going forward, they need him to be reincarnated because they'll be stuck working those cases until a powerful enough genius comes along, takes that, puts it in their programming, runs it, and is able to give you answers that are worth something. That's Marxist thinking. That is false humility. That is faux zen. That is not how greatness works. There's nothing to support what you're saying. He says, but yeah, I can relate in a lot of ways to your life experiences and approach. Cool. So if I was you, I would be in tons of pain from the criticism people I've attached myself to. Yeah, it's a lot of pain. I'm working through it, but yeah. And I appreciate these sentiments. I think you're a nice person, a good person. You're trying with your limitations. He says, I've taken the approach of avoiding people in general except for my wife. Most people are not worth the time, particularly if you are not saying this is you, but if you want to simply be able to really think clearly, you need to be able to do that. You need to detach while being observant, really being a voracious observer of existence while detaching yourself from humanity as much as you can. You can actually observe humanity better. You can enact it better if that's what you want to do. If you want to engage with humanity in certain ways, you have to do it. But if you want to observe and understand, there has to be distance. He says, maybe it isn't healthy for people like us to have daily interaction with the same people, but more controlled. Agreed. I'm not sure what you mean by people like us. If you mean sensitive seekers, then yes. If you mean people who are truly great, so great they break other people when they are around them, just being as they are, I don't think you are that kind of person. I haven't seen anything of you to suggest that. But I'll take the fact that you and I sound like we're both sensitive seekers, in which case you do have to control your daily interaction. There's no other way around it. The world is not set up for us to be able to do what we do. And if you are great, as I am, if you are at least a genius, as I am, most likely a super genius, I think mega genius, then yes, you'll have to control it because humans will simply, including yourself, not know how to conduct themselves. If you look at the vast majority of scientists, the best of their age, and how they reacted to Einstein, they were children, toddlers, juvenile reactions, pathetic, just their egos couldn't take it. Should you be aware of this? These were the top scientists. These are the people, by the way, that you say should have told Einstein he was right. Very few did. Very few did in his lifetime until he beat the shit out of them with predictions. And then actually after he was dead, people started seeing it more and more. One, because there's more and more predictions that proved he was right. And let's just be straight honest here, David. It was easier to tolerate the butthurt his greatness caused them after he was dead. A huge percentage of really smart scientists of his age could not handle how right he was and how stupid he made all their work. He did. He made fools of pretty much all the scientific community. There was a lot of rancor. And what did he do wrong? Just be a genius way beyond them. The kind of genius that in the future, he's not going to be humbled. He'd be amazed at where things go and what people are doing with E equals MC squared. You actually think Einstein would actually be here now and would travel around to all the college campuses in the world and meet the best scientists in the world, and he'd be humbled? No. He says, I believe there is definitely a pattern to humans related to the physical manifestations. Okay, so you are seeing something. Okay, cool. How much did you see before I told you? And how much can you see now? Can you see there are 4 priority quadrants, and that it relates to 4 builds, and that relates to the 4 Greek humor psychological profiles? If not, you're behind Gabe. He says, I think there might be some areas and skill sets that you might have to buckle down and invest time into if you really want to get closer to the truths of this. My suggestions is getting to the highest levels of math, physics, and computer science to give you some of the best tools for tackling problems in this day and age. That's a ridiculous thing to say. I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. You're acting like a college snowflake. Let me explain a few things to you. I know you're well-meaning, so I'm really going to try to explain this to you, and I hope you can understand. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. All right, so let's talk about this. Buckle down and invest time. I'm buckling down and investing time in studying things related to the mojo phenomenon far more than anyone else by far. The idea that any of you people at all can tell me to buckle down when you buckle down so little at anything, particularly related to this. So I have to be offended. Even though I like you, I have to be offended at that. That is the right thing to do, is to be offended, to be told to buckle down when I've been buckling down on things that are hard to do, and you are avoiding them. Let me explain this to you real slow, okay? In the beginning, when trying to actually figure out what was going on in the United States and its terrain, it was all based off of trackers and trappers. Now, years later, you can have people doing other things with railroads and different sciences and geological surveys and blah, blah, blah. That does not help with the initial surveying, the initial canvassing of the land. That went to trackers and trappers. And just so you know, lots of people like you and others whinged at this. Academics, political people, frontiers people who just want to make a new town. They did not like how much they had to rely on the trackers and trappers, and told those people they needed to actually be different. Well, maybe if the trackers and trappers are going to live in town, they'll need to be different, learn the ways of the townspeople. Not for living out in the wild, finding the tracks and trapping things on those tracks. No, all the people in the town, all of them, had to rely on that. And it burned. They didn't like how much that, but that's just the way it is. Humans routinely don't like when they have to rely on something. Now, you yourself have said that this is likely has some physical manifestation of what's going on. It's a tracking case. You think, really, Occam's razor, with what you've said and even my other detractors of saying, if you acknowledge that what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing at all, then I'm way ahead of all of you, have been for some time, and am likely to stay ahead of you for one simple reason. Tracking. And you think I need to buckle down with math and physics and computer programming? Why? That's ridiculous. Okay, let's just put this out here. Take Mitchell. Mitchell is very strong in these things, math, physics, computer science. If what I'm seeing is true, and it is, and you're even acknowledging yourself you believe it might be true in some degree, the discovery is found and tracked visually. Mitchell's abilities are nowhere near mine. He's been better at math and physics and computer science since I met him. And it has not helped him see it. In fact, he's still struggling like, is it a thing, or where is it actually a finite number, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's just lots of different riffs. No! None of that is true. Mitchell's wrong on all of that. No amount of math saved him from that wrong. No amount of computer skills, no amount of physics saved him from looking at humans and saying, maybe, maybe not. It is there, and he can't see it, despite already having better skills in those areas than me. So apparently those skills are not super important for figuring this out. Later on, implications of it, sure. But is it real? What are its edges? How do you find more? How do you track it? That's all visual. Visual tracking and spirituality and personal development to be able to visually recognize adequately. So, my former best friend from back in the day, his dad was a scientist for the military. Dude was super smart. He was way smarter than Mitchell on math, physics, and computer science. As good as Mitchell is, this guy was extremely good. He would crush him on all those. Mitchell's limited ability to acknowledge this phenomenon at all is better than that guy. And that guy's math, physics, and computers is better than Mitchell's. Mitchell's is better than mine. Yet I have the best reading ability. Mitchell has a little bit more from what I taught him. That guy has none. So you're telling me to go down a path that there is a person who went down that path their entire life and became one of the best out there, went around the world meeting other scientists and shit, lasers from outer space and satellites and all kinds of shit. None of that helped them. None. So I know you mean well, but I have to say, no thank you for your help. You're telling me to go down a route of all the people who couldn't do what I can do. If you acknowledge that I have done this at all, and I have, whether you acknowledge or not, but it sounds like you actually are saying, I think I have seen that. Okay, so I made the breakthrough. I have the skill set to continue making the breakthrough. Apparently, some people here, like Gabe, Gabe probably has more math and physics and computer science than me, and his reading ability is way lower. But he can at least see that there's 4 quadrants of the psyche and it relates to physiological cues to some degree, which I told him with my skill set. Now, there is way more alchemy categories than the one he's talking about. He can't get there with better math and science, so he can't get there. He's still struggling at maybe that's a thing, but not all the other stuff. He's wrong on that. Do you know how he's wrong? Because I can see it. I can see he's wrong. You can't. So seeing what's going on is the thing that everything else is based on. So I appreciate the goodwill, what you're trying to go for here, but you're actually trying to push me off to the side and go, well, go learn that for a while. Just this is very much like people when they say, well, Islam has the most insight to people, or Buddhism, this and that. And I'm like, well, this is human quality based on physiological cues that directly relates to the human condition on a profound level beyond what you're doing. And they go, well, you can't say what we're doing because you need to go read more texts. You need to listen to the sages. You need to listen to the imams. You need to listen to the priests up in temples. Have you read the Upanishads? Have you seen the phenomenon? Okay, so that's there. I can see it. These people either see it very little or can't see it at all, and now you're telling me that I should actually train like them. No. You need to train like me. You need to buckle down and watch more videos. You need to pull your head out of whatever prison math and science and other things makes you think you don't see this. Either they're distracting you from getting the training you need, or they're telling you that can't be true because what, physics says so. No, everything, math, physics, all of it is subordinate to empirical observation. If you can see it with your naked eye and other people can see it, it is what it is. It's a thing. I don't know how you're not getting this. I got to where I am by not doing what you're saying. How many people can, if I have done what even you and others are saying might be an inkling of what I've done, how many other humans have tried this? How many other humans had better math and physics than me that can't do this? Are you telling me that someone who actually goes out and does trails better than anyone else, and they need to get better at trails, that they need to what, come into town and learn how to be a townsperson better because that'll what, help them on the trails? Computer science is only relevant for what computer science can do. So, computer science about what? About what? About tracking the DNA? Why is that a thing? Why is DNA a thing? Because someone discovered it. How'd they discover it? Sure, science, math, medicine, blah, blah. No, microscopes. The most important thing in any kind of discovery is whatever lens you're using. And right now, without a doubt, everyone who's working on this case, including myself, our lenses need to get stronger. And you're giving me advice to actually go off that training. I appreciate the sentiment, but you're just wrong. He says things like signal processing and stochastic modeling might push you a lot closer. Might? I'm purifying at a rapid rate. That means I'm getting way better. I visually am getting better at what visually needs to be observed. I am getting my progress. I might get closer this way. First of all, I'm definitely getting progress the way I'm going, and you're saying I might get progress. And then signal processing. Please tell me the signal processing expert in the world who's actually figured out that there are physiological cues that relate to under the hood psychological processes. Go ahead. I'll wait. No, I won't, because you'll be forever trying to find that. It doesn't exist. Also, stochastic modeling, I don't even know what that means. I can look it up. Who cares? I don't need to know what that is to know the mojo phenomenon is there. And stochastic modeling, or however you fucking pronounce it, Buddhism, monotheism, shamanism, none of them did it. I did it. It is what it is. So, yeah. I'm sorry, but I've heard this advice a lot over the years of go look into this, go look into this. All I need to do is look at what they've been able to do for categorizing humans. If they're not even trying to categorize humans visually, I don't need to know what that word means. It's unimportant. Next, if they actually know that and they're not aggressively putting out a list of it, where's their list? So do they acknowledge that? I bet you a lot of people who do these things you're talking about wouldn't even acknowledge that's a thing. These fucking fools who study these things you're talking about would say that's science fiction. So despite them having math and physics and computer science and signal processing and stochastic modeling, I'm actually looking at reality that they think is science fiction. And that's going to hurt all their feelings. All that science they learned. But it's not going to be the biggest science. I have the biggest scientific discovery of all time, if it's true. If not the greatest discovery, I think it is, it's minimum in the ranking. How many people doing these fields do you think actually are doing something that's going to put them in the top 10 minimum of greatest discoveries ever? None of them. None of them. So I do not follow the tracks of lesser people. Is that what you do? I would recommend you kill that practice. Find out what inside you actually makes you think like that, and you kill that. It's holding you back. He says, also, huge revelation understanding what is possible is after studying enough math to see the limits of it. No. Okay. Let me try to make this simple for you. Do you think that math started with people's heads? Do you think that they discovered how the universe works by studying math and its principles? Physics and its principles? No. In fact, a lot of people who early studied didn't know those things, or they had key principles wrong, and yet they still did the breakthroughs that we're all living with today. If you don't know that, you need to study history. So, how did these earliest of humans actually bring things here that math and physics are now trying to explain better what it means? They looked at the stars. They visually observed the stars, visually observed there were clusters of stars, visually observed these stars moved in certain patterns. Visually observed, you could make some predictions off of seeing how the stars had been moving and where they're going to end up next. All that was done without math or physics. Math and physics began to explain what they were seeing. You don't actually try and figure out the physics of the stars when you don't look at the stars. When someone says, do you see a constellation over there? They're like, what constellation? How the fuck are you going to figure out the physics of where stars are or aren't? What the elliptical patterns of celestial bodies are or aren't? You have to see it. I know you don't hear this, but you have to have the lens. And it bothers people that the lens is the person. It just is. So, there is no math, there is no physics unless you're like, that jaguar runs faster than that antelope. What does that mean? How many lengths per second? Right? How long does it take for the jaguar to go from that tree to that tree? How does that differ from that gazelle going from that tree to that tree? All these things you're talking about begin with visually observing there's antelope, there's jaguars, there's different ages of them. They run differently based on that. They run different when they're scared versus angry. There's actually the trot of a horse, there's a gallop of a horse. Now you can break down miles per hour for a human and a horse and a car if you can fucking see a human, a horse, and a car. I know it's hard to accept. You cannot see the objects you want to analyze. Analyzing objects you can't see or have nowhere to even infer what might be there, it's just bullshit. In fact, math and physics routinely contradict each other. Math contradicts math, physics contradicts physics. How are these things thought up? And how are these things decided? To even have the differing views of math, have the differing views of physics, you actually have to be observing something. Say, I'm observing that, and I think that's there because of this. So to even have a thought about it, you have to see it. And then, who's right or wrong? Who's right or wrong about the math of those stars, the physics of those stars? Who's right or wrong about if that programming is working or not? What's the programming for? French? Being able to take a picture? Okay, someone's got to look at the program taking a picture, school yearbook, and say that picture is fuzzy. The computer programming will need to be better because it's not doing what? Making the clear picture that I should be able to see. You need to expand your vision to like a global, species-wide, full history of us. Math and physics are very helpful. They're actually late to the game. Observation and prediction happened first. And people were actually observing and making predictions, and then at some point, they started saying, why? Why is it like that? And that's where the math could try to figure it out. And maybe it gives a good answer. Sometimes math and physics give good answers that aren't the right answers. They just sounded like they were. Most of the scientists thought their math and physics answers were the correct answer over Einstein. His answers were more correct. And how did he beat them? Did he beat them by lots of math and physics? No. He actually beat them by the two things I use. First of all, he did a thought experiment. He had himself a little spiritual, existential, out-of-body experience. He's falling through an elevator in outer space, and that's how he made his big breakthroughs. So his breakthrough was a much more spiritual experience. And there are lots of people, and he kind of ostracized himself from a lot of things other people were doing in the scientific world. So he removed himself from this and beat them all by a spiritual, a simulator experience. Now, how did he prove them wrong? Pointing out what's in the sky. And if he pointed out what was in the sky and it was wrong, guess what? His math and physics are wrong. Math and physics do not drive observation. Observation drives math and physics. If you think otherwise, you must break that spell on you. You're just dead wrong. That's not how it works. He says, another thing is, it seems the way your model is set up reminds me of programming languages. It seems like it's more like an object-oriented versus a functional approach. Okay, see, you're trying to figure me out with math and physics. Programming. You're not observing what we're talking about sufficiently. He says, it's much easier to develop a model in pieces that can be interchangeable and that nest neatly, instead of a model that requires a structure to be understood from the beginning. Again, you're trying to figure it out in your head instead of looking at it. I'm basing it off of what I can see. If I see different stuff, I adjust what I think of stuff, because I'm seeing more stuff. He says, if you say another power is to be discovered, or another structure key to the model is conceptualized, it becomes very difficult to shoehorn it in without breaking other parts of the model. There are 8 powers of the psyche. That's what can be seen. If I see another one, that's what that is. I'm not married to it being 8. I can see 8. I'm not married to 16 basic designs. I'm seeing 16 basic designs. He says, but yeah, with more with more formal study, you actually think formal study is what the greatest thinkers in human history used? No, most of them actually ran away from colleges and did their own thing. Because if you're really ahead of your time, formal training just makes you stupid. The amount of information you gain is not worth it for all of the fucked up ways of thinking that kept all these other people from being able to do what you think you might be able to do. Meaning, if you can solve one, you can solve another. Algorithms, basically. There's so many people using and creating tools in different fields, it is probably best spent studying how to get up to speed rather than create a theory. This is all words. I'm sorry, go watch the video on possessions. You're possessed by words and structures in your mind feeling good. That's not how it works. In fact, a lot of times, observing the universe well, scrutinizing the obvious well, is going to actually give you a lot of dissonance of what current formalized math and physics and programming tells you how things go. That's always been the way of it. Their jobs are to explain, to break down, to try to correct, to try to experiment. That's what they do, but they are after the fact. Basic scientific method, observe. Your powers of observing what we're talking about are too limited. You're talking as if we're talking about an abstract idea, and how do we understand that abstract idea? While you said it is physically observable to some degree. So we're not talking about abstract ideas, that their logic can flow or not flow, and if you explain it this way it makes sense, and this way it doesn't make sense. I have some good logical explanations for what's going on with the Mojo phenomenon, but that wouldn't even be necessary if I can, and I can, point out it's there. We all have to figure out now what that is. And everyone's jumping off of being a tracker, or the fact that all your work is going to be based off of the initial trackers. That's always how it's been. Trackers lead the way. Lenses lead the way. Explorers lead the way. They see it's there. They accept that's a thing. There are stars. They move. They move at different speeds. If you travel to another part of the world, the stars look different, but there's still certain things that seem similar. Lots of people couldn't handle that early on. They wanted to believe there was some juju monster that made shit go on. For a long time, that was what it was. And they didn't beat down belief in the juju monster making things as they are with math and physics. That did come eventually. That was one of the great spears that slew that, stupid thing. But early on, it was this. Some dude, some lady observed in the stars that like every so many days, this thing goes across. And other people didn't. And then the juju priest said, blah, 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 and we will know things are going on because the sky will be clear. I have heard the word. Yeah, but some person's like, the sky's not going to be clear in 3 months. No, it will. Juju told it to me. Yeah, well, I've lived in this forest for like a decade, and like every 2 years, that thing happens. So you're saying that it's going to be clear? I'm telling you that it's not. And the juju priest was wrong, and that cult died. Now, did that require math? No. That person who made that observation, slayed that stupid, did not need to know any math, any physics, any programming, any things you're mentioning. They need the power to note what is being observed better than other people. Did the juju priests not sleep under the same sky? Yes, they did. They did sleep under the same sky. They saw the same stars, but they didn't watch them closely enough. They didn't see the patterns closely enough, and thus they cannot predict what was next going to happen in the pattern. This power prediction, a lot of you academic snowflake college people, you seem to think that the history of science with math and physics is what did that. No, science, and I have great admiration for it, it is the person that got bequeathed the independence of mind of true seekers who just observed nature, and when other people said, oh, those trails don't go up into the mountain. Yes, they do. No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't look like you can do it. Well, you're saying that from town. I've actually been to the mountain. You can go up there. There's 3 trails. And then you say I'm a liar, and I take people and I walk them up the mountain. And then you look like a jackass. Did I need math for that? I don't need to know how many kilometers that trail was. I don't need to know the physics of the elevation. I don't even need to know the programming language of how you would train some other people to walk up trails, to train them to walk up trails like me. I just need to be able to find the trails, walk up the trails, and walk back and say, hey, there are trails here. And even these people trying to track me now, they're admitting, yeah, there's probably some trail here he found. Okay, so we're talking trails. You understand this. Most modern learning has stepped away from how things really work. You'll see tracking and athletics. There's other ones too. Those kinds of things, you go to special schools, usually with like an apprentice, journey person, master kind of way. Because the classic academic, scholastic way of going, that's not how you fucking learn to do trails. That's not how you learn to dunk a basketball. Are you telling me that a basketball player needs to learn the math of basketball, the physics of basketball, the programming of basketball games in order to dunk on you? And if that person needs to dunk more, you think they should what? Do less dunk training and more math training? You're telling this elite metaphysical athlete I should go train stuff that is useless. So please, I'm going on here because I really want you to understand this. What you're talking about only exists because of strong-minded seekers with powers of observation and the ability to actually take in large patterns and just see it. And then other people say that pattern's not like that, and you're like, yes, it is. They don't have to know why that pattern is there. They just have to see it and point it out. And if anyone else can go, you're right, that is there. Now other people can't see it at all, or if they do see it, the juju priest goes, you'll die or you'll go to hell if you agree that star is there. And a lot of them are like, okay, and the juju priest stays in line for a while. But over time, enough people are like, yeah, that thing did happen in the night sky. The juju priest said it would or wouldn't. They said the wrong answer. And that person or persons who live out in the woods, they said it was right. That's where science came in. Why is that wild man in the woods right when he should be wrong? Or everyone says they should be wrong. Why, according to math, physics, or whatever's going on, juju priests saying there won't be tracks, there are tracks and that person said so. You're really just lost. You're going off on trails that aren't there and you're not understanding. This is the whole problem with typology in general. Okay, it's amazing people don't get this. When they talk about like typology stuff and cognitive functions, they do it in this scholastic manner. And that's because how the information has been transmitted and passed down. That's not how it got here. Not really. 4 humors, Greek medicine. How do you know about that? You read about that. You read about that. How do you think they did it? The people who wrote it down. Is that where they learned it? From writing? No, because there had to be someone who wrote it first. Where did that come from? Did they just think it up in their head? Yeah, just wandering around eating an apple and they just think, yeah, there's 4 humors. They fucking saw it. They saw it. And they wrote about what they saw. And then future generations, very few of them could see it. So they worked with it in words and got lost. Then Jung comes along and he says there's 8 cognitive functions. How the fuck does he know that? How does he know that? He saw it. How does he train people? Words. MBTI, they say there's not 8, there's 16. There's 16 because there's an extra energy field Jung didn't have. Why? They just sit around a cafe and go, you know what? 8 doesn't sound right. I think 16 sounds better. No, they noticed there was another phenomenon that was not being accounted for. They observed it. How they pass it down? Written surveys. Okay. In this topic alone we're talking about all the major advances. There's no way you can explain it without being possessed, drinking Kool-Aid, that it was not visual observation everything's based on. And how many people worked on the Greek 4 humors after that was a thing? Thousands, millions of people. They wrote lots of stuff. I'm sure lots of them had math and physics. How many of them took it from 4 to 8? Jung. Do you think he did that with math and physics? No, he observed it. All these things, it is observation, and these other elements, these scholastic elements, they come in afterwards, and they're very important to verify, to prove, to make sense of, but that's not how it initially starts. And you basically can't see stars and either just are never going to get that ability, or you don't want to, and you don't want to be as big of a deal as it is. Yeah, it is. The first thing humans did before math and physics, they mapped the stars. That was the first thing. How do you not know this? Mapping the stars started it all. Mapping the creatures of the forest started it all. Visually observing how babies come out of certain parts of your body started it all. Cutting people's bodies open and just picking at their entrails and seeing how they went together mechanically with your eyes is how these things began. You have to understand it. And that's how things, we have so much of this now that we've forgotten that's how big breakthroughs happen. That's how they happen. That's how they've always happened. That's how it'll happen going forward. You're telling the person who sees the stars better than other people that they should go learn math. Why? So they can agree with the juju? Because you realize that back in the day, the juju priests, they actually controlled all of the intelligentsia of the tribe, including what math they had, what physics they had, what sciences of nature that they had. Yeah, and how many people amongst them realize that, oh, that star is not going to be where you say it's going to be? I don't even know why, but it is. And later on, mathematicians and physicists that actually get that right, and they're really smart. Do you know why? Because they could see that too, and they realize, oh, that is a thing. That is a given. Now we must train our minds to figure out why we're seeing the intestines as they are. Why are animals on 4 legs? Why aren't there animals with like a gazillion legs? Why aren't there just animals that are bouncing around like pogo sticks? Could be. Mathematically, that's possible. Through physics, that's totally possible. In fact, you can make a very good physics explanation how bouncing around like a pogo stick is better than being a biped, better than being a quadruped, better than gliding. There's all kinds of things you could actually make it up in your head, and there'd be math, you could make sense of that. Physics makes sense of that. Yet it's not there! It's not there. So, maybe theoretically, but first let's try to concentrate on biological evolution and the fact that it ends up this way. So, you're going to actually tell me I need to what? Study biology more. So you understand this? We're in a very primitive stage right now. So you're asking me to go study the ins and outs of biological chemistry and things like that, when the purpose of doing that is to figure out animals in the forest, of which you're saying there aren't really animals, or if there are, there's not that many variety, or they've not been categorized yet. What is the point of actually bringing those other things in if you can't even observe the reality of the situation well enough? You're just going to be mentally masturbating with math. Yay! He says, introducing partners into your research will inject uncertainty. As the uncertainty mixed, which was a great benefit to you, no, it wasn't. These people whinging on was not a benefit for me. I've been purifying. That was the benefit. These people, their insecurities made purifying much harder for me. And that is a vital process. So I know how to do this job. I'm actually tracking these trails, and there's purification you have to do to yourself in order to be a better tracker. They made that crucial thing, that crucial process, much more difficult than it needed to be. He says, a big strike on confidence was the introduction of tiering samples by splitting the highest confidence from A, B, C. It's not splitting the confidence, that's just something that I give to you so you all feel better. It's splitting of difficulty of samples. And there is some confidence to that to some degree in that, okay, you are aware that trackers split tracks up into difficulty levels. And that they naturally are saying, I think that's where the game trail goes, but caveat, it's on a fainter trail. So I guess you could say, yes, they're less confident of that. They're confident enough to move forward. They're confident enough to do their job. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Which points out if 80% of samples are fuzzy, they're not fuzzy, they're challenging. I find them more challenging, but doable. You all can barely do A grades. A grade samples, you're like, I think maybe there's 4 priorities that go with body types? Okay, so then how accurate can the implications of the model be? Are you asking the best tracker who has trails of 4 different degrees of firmness if you should go off their map? Yes. You are aware that all the early maps people used from almost everywhere in the world, first when people got there wanted to do civilized shit, there were already trackers and trappers there, and they had maps. And everyone had to use their maps. Yeah. Now later on, you can bring in surveyors, professional things, and so forth, but in the beginning, there's certain people who are the only ones who can find their way around there and not get lost and fall off a fucking cliff. Not go out too far and, you dehydrate and die. So, you're just going to have to accept a tracker's map. Have you seen ancient maps? They're very primitive compared to now. But the best maps of the day are still what people had to use. Because that's the best that could be done. And how did those first maps get made? Are you aware of this? People just walked around. They just walked around and looked at shit, and they actually walked out the paces and thought, like, I think that's like 30 paces, I think that's like 1,000 paces, and that's how they did it. Was it exact? No, there were things that could have been done better. It was light years beyond what was there before. There was no map at all. There was no map at all. And early on, when those maps need to be made better, do you know how they started out? Small, with not a lot of trails. So what was the next stage? Where we're at now? More trails need to be found. They need to do more trail tracking because that's how all these first maps are going to get here. I'm telling you, as the world's expert on this, and I am, no doubt, math without this ability to observe will just confuse you. Physics, all those things, if you actually are trying to do that, not looking at the night sky, you're going to come with a lot of dumb fucking reasons of why stars do what they do because you can't look at stars. You are inadequate at looking at and scrutinizing the obvious fact that those stars are there. They move in certain ways, and during certain seasons, they do other things. It just is. You have to accept this. Then you can work on why. You're still working on, is it there? And how do we figure out what its edges are with tools that are not designed for that job? You start by observing, you start by observing, you start by observing. You can observe, you can't observe, you can't observe. You need to rely on those who can observe. You need to rely on those who can observe. You must rely on those who can observe. And this bothers you. It bothers all of you. You just have to deal with it. All right, he says other stuff, but basically it's kind of more of this. Good-natured, I like you, David, I do. But even your good-naturedness, you're just giving out advice that you really shouldn't, and you should be listening to advice I give you. I'm telling you the basic fundamentals of how seekers have moved forward. You're talking from a very modern person, kind of like a scholastic, educated book person. You're not a person who's actually walked out into the fields and looked at the animals doing what they do. You've not actually been there when bodies have been opened up. You're trying to explain things that you yourself have not seen. So I like you, but I can't take you seriously. He says, anyways, that's my input. I write this partly at the worry that you will go incognito and not contribute an open discussion on how to understand humans. Oh, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out here loud and proud, and I will be able to push forward without, no offense, even you, these kinds of responses that are from bad places and it's stupid, or in your case, I believe it's coming from a good place, but still, it's not helpful. You say, I hope you keep expressing yourself in accessible ways as I enjoy your viewpoint. Well, I'm glad that you do. I will continue to do so, and we'll see where the journey takes us.